Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules today to join the call. And hopefully this webinar or slash, I would say, virtual roundtable on the topic of business continuity with AWS would be insightful for you with some key takeaways and informative, as this is a hot topic right now that we're seeing demand for by many of our customers across the region. So let me kickstart by introducing myself to everyone. So my name is Imad Al-Yasir. I am part of the AWS MENA team based in Dubai, UAE. And in my current capacity at AWS, I look after our commercial business across the UAE, where we work day in, day out with our customers of all profiles, from enterprise to corporates, SMEs, and mid-market. And over the course of this joint roundtable with one of our key partners, Citrus, we're going to be talking to you about how we can establish business continuity with some of our AWS services, which are mainly backup, storage, disaster recovery, and CloudEndure. So that's it from my end. I don't know if Dan, would you like to introduce yourself before we kickstart and go into the agenda and the slides?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Maad. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Sazamro. I'm a director at Citrus Consulting Services. I'm based here in Dubai. We at Citrus, we are an advanced consulting partner where we specialize in AWS and all AWS-related services. And we help customers across Middle East and Africa, help them through the cloud journey, help them to modernize their IT infrastructure. I'm looking forward to having this roundtable discussions today with you all. Thank you very much for taking time to join us today.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Citrus team, the whole Citrus team for organizing this valuable roundtable. So let's go into the agenda. And I know it's Thursday, end of the week, afternoon, so it's going to be straightforward, crisp, and brief, with valuable insights and some good action plan and next steps. So the agenda takeaways for today. So we're going to be discussing over the next couple of over the course of the hour about backup. So the importance of having a cloud-based backup in your organization right now. What are the benefits, the different kind of storage that we have at AWS, and the AWS advantage. And then we're going to shift focus and move into the disaster recovery scenario, which is, as I said, it's a hot topic. It's something that is very important and critical right now, especially in the age of COVID, in the age of Corona, where organizations are working remotely. It's crucial that organizations of all profiles have a DR strategy in place. So we're going to discuss more about disaster recovery services that AWS platform offers. What are the benefits? And we're going to go into CloudEndure, which is one of our disaster recovery services, and some success stories. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A in case if you have any questions, both from a business or technical standpoint. We're here to address them. And yeah, so we'll start with the backup.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maad. So the idea for this, the primary idea for this roundtable, as Imad mentioned, is around backup and disaster recovery, essentially sort of revolving around the premise of business continuity. This day and age, especially in the current situation, the things that we're going through right now, there are disruptions that are happening across when it comes to IT operations. People are working remote. There are challenges that we're facing on a day-to-day basis in terms of getting our things done. So business continuity is a prime topic that most of the CIOs, CTOs that are having today, or business owners that are having today. So we thought it would be more appropriate to bring this topic up, talk about it, go in detail, and sort of plant the idea in your mind in terms of how you can take this forward within your organization. So you can rest assured that your business is protected, you have a business continuity in place, and you can carry on with your day-to-day operations. So that's the background, for choosing this topic for today's discussion. So let me start with a very fundamental question of why do we need, backup? Why do we need to back up the data? So if you look back in the history, and ever since we've started creating information, started creating data, I'm going way back, even before the dates of ledgers and books and whatnot, we have always found ways to, preserve this information, preserve the data, because things break, things tend to fall apart. And in current situation, if you look at it today, almost all the data that we generate are being stored in the form of, electronic or stored electronically. And electronics today follows the Murphy's Law. They all have a finite lifetime. So they tend to fail. So it's all about how you design, how you protect your information. So even when that disaster happens, you're protected, your business continue to survive. So backup becomes very, very critical and crucial element of IT operations today. It doesn't matter, how big or how small your organization is. Backup is critical. Backup is, in a way, it's your insurance, it's your safety net, right? So hence we're concerned about data. Hence we're backing those data up. So some of the points, if we look at it, why do we back up our data? In case of disaster, we want to recover the data or information with the shortest possible time. Next slide, please. So this is one reason. We want to be able to recover the shortest possible time. And number two, we want to be able to recover the data with the least amount of loss. For example, if you say that, okay, it's a mission critical application, I'm not okay to lose even a single transaction, then you've got to think about having a different kind of a backup solution. Or if it is a non-mission critical, it's okay to have, say, okay, even if I lose data for about a day, I can have all of these last 24 hours of transaction replayed, either manually or a different way. So then you have to think about a different type of a backup solution. So and every one of these solutions comes with its own cost. So you got to strike a balance between what is the cost of this backup solution and what is my liability requirement. So you need to have a right balance between your liability and your and the cost investments that are required. So this becomes a crucial element when it comes to deciding the right backup solution. Next slide. So before you go into selecting a backup solution, there are a set of questions we advise our customers to go through. For example, how important is this application for your business? Is this core bread and butter of your business? Can you live without this application even for 4 hours? How critical it is? And what is the recovery point objective? Meaning, as I mentioned earlier, are you okay to have, or is it okay? Can you survive even one data loss, or can you survive 1 hour data loss, or you cannot even survive a single transaction loss, right? So the different types of applications, the mission critical applications, and all the way down to regular attendance system type applications that we deal with. So not all applications require sort of high RPOs. So one of the points that we'll have to ask, what is the associated recovery point objective, yeah, for the application that you're dealing with? How do you intend to store the backup data? Do you want to store it in a nearline storage or an offline storage? How do you want to store your data? Where do you want to store the data? Things like, as I talked about, nearline or offline storage. And how do you plan to recover this information or the backup, into your application? So this, in a way, defines your recovery time objective, such as, okay, if I have to recover data from my backup, it takes anywhere between 2 to 4 hours. First of all, can I survive that, 4 hours of downtime? So that defines your the type of backup solution that you ought to put in place. So these are some of the questions that one would have to ask before deciding on what type of backup solution that's suitable for your business, for your application. Next slide. So if you look at today, in many of the data centers today, you still see a lot of traditional backup environments, which is you have a tape library, you have a bunch of tapes, you have some SAS or a SAN or a NAS storage where you back up your data, you throw them out there. In fact, I come from a data center background. I used to work with long ago, I used to work with a bank where I was managing the entire data center. I used to deal with Sun Microsystems, what we call, a monster storage tech 8500 tape library. So big that you can literally walk into the tape library, like how you would walk into your, walk-in closet. So you got to walk in to pull the tapes out and put the new tapes in. Really cool stuff. But back in the days, it made sense. It's a bank that's mission critical, dealing with a lot of mission critical applications like wire transfer servers, co-banking servers, and mainframe. A whole lot of critical applications. So back then it made a lot of sense. But even then, if you look at it, one type of backup goes into the disks, the other type of backup goes into the tapes. So it's a department by itself. We used to have a lot of people managing the backup, and if you are still doing it, we got to take a look at those solutions and see, are you doing it in a very efficient way? For example, if you're still backing your data up to a SAN or a NAS storage onto a disk specifically, essentially, you're throwing the money down the drain, unless you're dealing with really, really super critical applications. And the tape libraries are really sort of really old technology, though it has come a long way, but still there are better ways of backing up your data. And from a reliability standpoint, it is also a question mark. And in fact, back in the days, we used to a common joke, a story around, which is there used to be a guy whose job is to back up the application data every day, put it into a tape, and ship the tape off to an offsite, like Iron Mountain, right? So every day he used to take the backup, put it in the car, drive home. So he doesn't want to lose the tape, so he will put the tape onto a magnet on the refrigerator, goes to sleep, wakes up in the morning, picks up the tape, drives to Iron Mountain, deposits the tape, and goes back to office. And kept doing this for years. One day they had a major outage. They want to recall all the tapes back. Made the request to Iron Mountain. Iron Mountain brought all the tapes back. They tried restoring it, guess what? Is just a blank tape. Because he every day he used to go put the tape on top of a magnet. These are all magnetic tapes, right? So the magnet wipes off everything. So the point I'm trying to make is there are several different ways things can go wrong, right? Especially when you're dealing with electronics and IT equipment. They all have a finite life. It could be a power surge, or from a power surge all the way down to a human error, like in this case. So you gotta rely on a system which gives you highest possible durability, because you're talking about backup data. You can't put a high availability for your backup, right? You generally do high availability for your applications. You can't do redundancy or a fault tolerance for your backup, right? That the backup itself is your safety net. So the traditional backup environment, though it worked for several decades, but there are better ways of backing up your data, and a much cost efficient way. Next slide. So so like I said, you got to look at modern backup architectures that support API interfaces that are secure, very simple to manage, and gives you extreme high amount of durability, and more importantly, gives you a flexible investment or flexible cost of ownership. So, for example, if you look at it back in the days when we were dealing with storage tech 8500, it would have costed us a couple of $1 million, in 15 years ago, money value. Even before you store the first gigabyte of your backup data, you have to make $1 million or a couple of $1 million of investment. That model is no longer a cost-effective way of backing up your data. So if you're backing up 1 GB of data today, you only have to pay for 1 GB. Or if you're backing up 100 terabytes of data, then you pay for 100 terabytes of data. So you do require, in this day and age, you do require a variable cost element. So you pay what you use, which is the mantra. If you look at most of the IT operations, so move away from the capex, move towards more of OpEx driven IT budget. Next slide. So if you look at today, if you look at Amazon's cloud backup solutions, the benefits are it works seamlessly with your existing investments. If you already have made an investment, you don't have to throw them away. It coexists. It helps you to continue to reap the value out of your existing investments, but at the same time, gives you the ability to scale for your future requirements. Could be things like storing data for 7 years, 8 years for compliance reasons or statutory reasons. You don't have to throw more money at your data center for more storage or more backup solutions, right? So you could consider using cloud-based Amazon backup solutions. It works seamlessly with your existing investments. Cost-effective off-site storage alternatives. The cost of terabyte today, on AWS, is way cheaper compared to your on-prem, per terabyte storage cost. Elimination of physical assets that you're dealing with. Things like tapes. They're prone to fail over a period of time. Tend to get lost. So you have the responsibility of maintaining and managing your assets, right, including tapes. And the other, this is an interesting element which is getting unlocked as we speak, is backup data, right? It's just sitting there collecting dust, doing nothing. what if we can put the backup data for other purposes? So a lot of customers, off late interacting, we're able to unlock value out of the backup data, put the backup data for other use cases like business intelligence, reporting, or analytics. They're looking at big data type problem statements using the backup data. So it's a very interesting way of doing it. Well, put your backup data to use for different use cases. Next slide. So one of the service, the backup service, is offered by Amazon. It's S3 and S3 associated Glacier service. So S3 is one of the oldest service that Amazon had introduced. It's been out there for a long time. It's very, very reliable and a matured product. It's being used for many, many, many large enterprises today for many different use cases. So if you look at it, S3, it promises you 99.99 SLA on the durability. I don't think any other service offers that kind of extreme, high level of SLA on the durability, which is unprecedented. And it is something that's available across the globe, and most of the regions have these services available today. And the beauty with it, with S3 and Glacier type storage, is that it has the intelligent storage steering, meaning you can apply your lifecycle policies, things like anything which is not being accessed, sitting as a cold data, move to low-end storage, or anything older than 2 years or older than 3 months, move to Glacier. So these are things that will get stored onto a extremely low cost, sometimes even tape-based type storage under Glacier. Here, the promise is from AWS is that they're taking care of all the liabilities and giving you the high availability for your data. So you don't have to worry about managing assets like your tapes or managing infrastructure like your backup software and backup infrastructure. So all of those things that taken off of your shoulders, so you could focus into your other business operations and IT functions. Next slide. And there are other more features that are there with the S3 service. Things like cross-region replications. In case if you have a compliance reason that the data need to be stored in 2 different locations, or like say 100 miles, should be 100 miles apart. So in which case you can store. All you have to do is just worry about putting the data in one location. It'll automatically get replicated to another location. It could be one copy sitting in Ireland, the other copy could be sitting in say Frankfurt. Or if you want to completely far isolated continent level redundancy, then you put one in Ireland, the other in say Singapore. So that gives you fault tolerance even at a continent level. The replication is now supported at an object level or a bucket level, and it gives you all of this at an extremely low latency, with security in place as by default. Next slide. Yeah. The other service is AWS Backup service. So assume if you already are on AWS and you're running workloads such as say EC2 or RDS or other AWS services, we have AWS Backup as a service. The beauty with this is it seamlessly and natively works with all the other services within AWS, and you get all the features what you're normally used to with your backup infrastructure, things like scheduling, policy management, lifecycle management, encryption, and reporting. You get all of these things in out of the box. So this is apart from, for example, you take EBS as a service. So if you're running EC2 is your virtual machine. You use EBS by default, which is elastic block storage, as a disk attached to the to your virtual machine to store your data that need to be permanent, need to be stored permanent, right? So you have one level of protection, which is snapshot, but then if you want another level of protection, another level of backup, you would consider AWS Backup as a service, and it is supported across all the other services within AWS. And the beauty with this is you can centrally manage all of your backup for all the services across. Next slide. So in summary, what I wanted to say is that a lot of customers still are throwing money at traditional, backup infrastructure. My recommendation is that take a look at it. Is there a better way to back them up in a much more cost-efficient way? Not just the cost, but more importantly, from a headache standpoint, do you still want to take care of all of these headaches, managing the assets on your own, or do you want something as a service where the SLA is guaranteed, and the weight is off your shoulders, right? So just one quick customer story I want to leave you with. So this is a customer is in the financial services industry. They store what we call the contract notes for every transactions when a customer has with this financial services company. They're talking about some anywhere between 20,000, 40,000 contracts every day. They all go in a PDF format. Traditionally, they were storing this information in a NAS storage, and they decided to go with 100 terabytes of NAS storage appliance as an add-on, because they need to keep all of these contract notes for 7-8 years for compliance reasons, statutory reasons. So it would have costed them a couple of $1 million for sure, at least $1 million or $1.5 million for the entire whole bunch of controller nodes and a whole bunch of what we call disk drive, disk arrays. Instead, they chose to go with. So we did the assessment. We gave them the TCO ROI analysis. They looked at it. They ended up then going with a solution which cost them 1/10 of a traditional data center based solution. And the beauty is it gave them the opportunity or put them in the driver's seat, gave them the opportunity to pay on an OpEx model. So these things grow over a period of time instead of you buying upfront for the next 3 years, the storage capacity for the next 3 years upfront. Now you're only paying for what you're using, and you have a petabyte scale capacity, more than petabyte scale capacity in S3. So today you're using 10 terabytes, you only pay for 10 terabytes. 3 years from now, you might go to 200 terabytes. But then when you get to 200 terabytes is when you pay for 200 terabytes. You don't pay for the entire 200 terabytes today, and keep that capacity as an insurance to support your future capacity requirements. So I just want to leave you with this thought. When it comes to backup, think about it. There are different ways that you can design your backup solution, and the cloud option, especially from AWS, gives you far more flexibility at much lower total cost of ownership. So with that, I'll pause here and I'll hand it back to Imad to walk you through a disaster recovery story. Imad?
Thank you so much, Dan. So now we go into the second part of the presentation and the final part, which is disaster recovery. So if we think about it, every business right now requires data protection, and that's regardless of any size of the company or whatever industry or vertical you operate in. When we think about DR, it is the business continuance, the operationalizing of a process for getting a business back online in case of any event that happened, God forbid. At AWS, we define DR as the operationalizing of the systems that are needed to get the business back online. So every business have had some event that they need to plan for. So it is key to have a plan, a DR plan or strategy in place, especially right now and nowadays. If you're running most of your workloads on premises, it's good to have a DR as an insurance policy in case, God forbid, something happens, that you won't suffer from any downtime or it affects your functionality in business. So now, just a sec. So when we spoke about disruptions that usually happen, so there are three or several kinds of disruptions that usually affect organizations of all sizes, and they're usually unplanned for, or we cannot expect or anticipate. The number one is natural disasters, and the second one is your current infrastructure availability and access, and finally rogue actors. And what we mean by rogue actors are, the internal and external threats. So all those things are not items that you can solve per se, but absolutely have to have a plan in place as an ambassador for your business. And nowadays, IT is no longer a different department that's separated from the organization. It has become really a crucial part of the organization where it has to be completely aligned with the business functions across the organization. So the reality is, and that would be surprising to maybe all of you, if not most of you, the reality is that many of us have not made appropriate DR plans. We don't have plans in place. And this should be an eye-opener. According to IDC, it estimates, and that was a research that was done back in 2019, it estimates that up to half of all organizations would be unlikely to survive if hit by a disaster. And in part, this is because on average, we have fewer than half, 48.4% of applications that are covered by actual disaster recovery. And those are full production, business critical, mission critical line of business applications. So that has always been important to consider, but especially right now, as I said earlier in the call, especially right now in the age of COVID, where we're working remotely, we don't have frequent access to our offices. Our customers our employees are working remotely as well, and many of your company or many of your operations are online or depends on being highly available and up and running all the time. So it is crucial right now to really consider a DR and a backup strategy and consider and initiate that discussion with AWS. So if you're thinking about doing DR in the cloud, what are some of the benefits utilizing cloud for DR? So that's a very common question that we hear from our customers and that we usually discuss. Well, the first one is pretty straightforward, and I think it's important to all of us, especially in those events where cash flow are kind of tight. So the most obvious one is cost, and cost is significant, especially when you consider traditional disaster recovery scenario, where you need to pay upfront, invest in a big amount of money, chunk of money on-premise hardware, manage it, maintain it, assign a dedicated team to it. So moving to a DR, cloud-based DR on AWS, this would really reduce your costs significantly and improve your operational efficiency and security as well. If you are running a secondary site for DR purposes, there is the cost, as I said, of the facility itself, the power, the cooling, the lighting, infrastructure required, which you have to provision for peak capacity in order to support the failover of your applications. In contrast, if you contrast this with the cloud, as I said, no upfront initial investments, you only pay for the compute or storage when you actually need it. So you replicate your business critical application on AWS cloud, and only in the unlikely case, or God forbid, an event happens, disaster happens, then your services won't be interrupted. And you can actually scale down and scale up when needed. And this will automatically lower your IT management overhead. It's easy to do, repeatable testing of failover events, and you can get systems up in benefits. So the key takeaway from this side, the key benefits of considering a DR strategy and AWS DR service is number one, cost, and the second thing is agility benefits. So at AWS, we have what we call this framework for the different modules that we can employ to support DR in the cloud. So if you look at the right hand side, the first one we kind of talked about it, and Dan talked about it, which is the backup and restore, and that's the first part of the spectrum. But as we start going from backup, restore, and scaling right across the spectrum, we move into the Pilot Lite, which increases cost slightly, but provides aggressive RPO and RTO. And then if we go into warm standby, the third part, the third phase, which is a scaled down version of your existing environment. And finally, we go into a multi-site or hot standby, which is exactly a replica of your existing environment, which is doing load balancing across two environments. So as you go across that spectrum, you're expecting to get lower and lower RPOs and DTOs, and this is something very critical, and it's always part of the checklist when you want to develop a DR strategy in place for your company organization. Now, when we sit with our customers and we start with, again, the cloud, as we said, it's a journey. It's no longer the future. It's the present. It's happening right now, especially with the global pandemic. It was an eye opener for our customers across the region, and it honestly increased the appetite of our customers to start, adopting the cloud and moving to the cloud. And the best entry point into the cloud, I would say, is backup in DR. And this is where the ideal start to experience the cloud platform, AWS cloud platform. So we always start, when we discuss with our customers, we start with the requirements. So we work together on identifying what are your key applications that you want to protect, what are the mission critical applications that you're running on premises, and you're not quite ready right now to move them full production to cloud. So we identify those applications, we analyze them, we define your RPO and RTO objectives and requirements, and the compliance considerations, and then we do the sizing, and we help you migrate or activate a DR service on AWS. So this is just a disaster recovery plan checklist, which I wanted to just present to you and show you, if you can have just a few seconds to look at it. So it's, and we're going to be sharing that presentation with you after the call. It's good to go through them and see if you already have, if you tick some of the boxes there, but we do recommend that you go through each of those checklists, because it can help you in your discussions with the management in terms of developing a long-term business to IT roadmap and strategy within your company. Now, going into DR, so what is the DR service that AWS offers? So we have something called a CloudEndure. CloudEndure is actually a leading provider of data migration and DR solutions, and it was acquired by AWS back in 2019. What CloudEndure does, it actually simplifies and reduces the cost of cloud-based DR by offering lots of automation. So few core things that it does and are really interesting to mention here is, number one, you can actually deploy an agent on your primary application servers. That agent would provide a block level replication to AWS, and that block level replication can support the applications and all associated configurations, /data, files, etc. The second thing that it does is it then uses machine conversion technology to look at the resources, applications that are running on premises, and build an equivalent destination resource within the AWS cloud. So that's part of the automation as well. And the third thing and final thing is it takes it even to one step further. Not only does it build the destination resource, but also builds a scaled down version of that resource and creates a staging environment where you can replicate the data to staging environment and have it live within the AWS cloud. and have a mapping of the ultimate resource that you are going to expand in case of a failover, God forbid. So this is what we discussed. So how does disaster recovery on AWS work? Basically, you install the agent, replication begins at a very low cost staging area, you configure the blueprint, and then you test the target server, and then you're up and running. In case there is a failover or a disaster of any kind, or you were attacked, then you won't feel anything, because automatically you're going to move to the DR on the cloud. So in a failover event, what AWS DR or CloudEndure is it's an orchestration engine, if you can say, which automatically launches fully operational workloads in the target AWS region at the time of the failover. And this process includes, cloning of disks from the staging area to the target area, and this entire orchestration process typically takes only a few minutes, which is honestly fantastic and amazing. So all the data storage, your incurring costs are at a much lower rate, which provide great economics of this great solution. Instead of comparing it to the traditional DR scenario that we're used to, or our customers have been used to, which is buying the same equivalent hardware, putting it in a different site, but technically it's in the same area, district, or region, which is not completely, if you think about it, it's not an actual DR strategy. The third thing I want to mention here is that cloud migration does not need to be complex, or even time consuming, or even costly. Our AWS CloudEndure DR migration, what it does, it simplifies, expedites, and reduces the cost of the cloud migration by offering a highly automated, what we say, lift and shift solution. With CloudEndure or AWS DR, an agent-based solution, you can migrate all of your applications and databases, whether they're Windows or Linux. And CloudEndure or our AWS DR solution supports common databases that most probably you're running right now on premises, which are Oracle, SQL, Windows, Linux, SAP, you name it. So it's very compatible with almost all applications and workloads. So as we're approaching closer to the time, let me move a bit faster. So allow me to share a success story that was mentioned on a stage last year. And this is a financial services company, a famous financial services company, United Bank. I'm sure you're all aware about this company. It has $33 billion in assets, and it's one of our success stories when it comes to implementing a complete DR scenario on AWS. So their current scenario was they had two physical data centers, primary and secondary. It has multiple forms of replications from storage, database application, vSphere, etc. And they were facing some challenges. The main challenges were, as we mentioned earlier, the typical challenges that you also face as well. Environmental, which are being prone to, they were in an area that is prone to natural disasters. Geographical, in terms of physical location situation, which was in direct flight paths. And finally, the facilities, requiring additional investments from power to support ongoing DR operations. And this is what we said. So it's they had increase in overhead. So that was the key challenges, and their key objectives were very straightforward and very clear. Number one, they wanted a solution, a DR solution, a cloud-based DR solution that would help them with scalability, elasticity, resiliency, efficiency, and enablement. And the go-to person was clear. It was AWS as the leading cloud provider globally, with a very mature platform and very mature capabilities, services. And in terms of cost, it was very appealing and attractive for them. So before doing the DR modernization, what they thought about, they went through the checklist that I already shared earlier, and they looked at it and said, you know what, the problems that we are trying to resolve if we want to move to AWS DR or DR or backup service is they want to securely transport their data to AWS. They want to keep their data in sync, avoid paying for unused compute on top of the required storage, address multiple replication, and many more. And they decided, as I said, to move to a modernized DR architecture, which was delivered via AWS DR CloudEndure. So for the securely transporting of data, they use Direct Connect and CloudEndure encryption. For keeping their data in sync, CloudEndure's continuous data replication engine, as I said, since it's automated, it provides real-time asynchronous block level replication. And from a cost standpoint or a commercial standpoint, they wanted to avoid paying for unused compute on top of the required storage. So CloudEndure maintains ongoing replication into a low-cost staging area, but they only pay for the actual DR workload once a failover happens, which was very economical for them. And as you can see, these are other use cases that they addressed via our platform and via our services, CloudEndure and DR. So post moving to AWS DR, and this is what they actually presented on stage, is that those are the immediate benefits that they realized once they moved to AWS. Number one is they leveraged, our services and settings. Snapshot, 48 hours of protection every 10 minutes. What changes in DR testing for the customer is that it removed the need from constantly updating scripts to recover storage and VMs, and remove the dependency on physical hardware. So this was kind of an overview of what AWS can offer you in terms of a business continuity strategy. And this is a very generic, holistic overview of why you should consider moving to a cloud-based disaster recovery or backup or storage. And so if I want to wrap up, just a few final thoughts for you. Until recently, enterprise-grade disaster recovery have been really expensive for most organizations, especially right now. So thanks, honestly, to the rapid development of cloud infrastructure, organizations can now attain top of the line, I would say, DR capabilities into AWS at a fraction of the cost. No need for hardware, no need for software licenses, disaster recovery infrastructure or management and monitoring, no need for upfront payments and cost. Preserve your cash flow that you have, invest them in more critical IT projects or business projects, and move to a more capable, more mature, more secure platform, which is AWS. And by moving to an AWS DR as well, you have the luxury for easy testability, self-service DR, flexibility between infrastructure as well, and you can achieve as well your desired RPO, RTO objectives, which is almost near zero in AWS's case. So finally, I would like to end it with the final statement is even the most prepared companies can experience IT disruption. Caused by either application failovers, cyber attacks, or even human errors. So this leads to downtime or data loss, which is something that organizations right now cannot afford. And AWS DR Backup is your insurance policy for your, honestly, peace of mind. So I'll end on that note, and I'll open it up to Q&As if you have any questions, so that we'd be more than happy to address them, either myself or the Citrus team. Just if you look at this slide, this is just the features and benefits just for your visibility. I'm going to share that with you as well, between the different disaster recovery strategies that we have. So as you can see clearly, a cloud-based DR and backup is the ideal strategy for you versus the on-premises one. So yeah, sorry. Before the Q&As, I'd like to hand it over again to the Citrus team to discuss some promotions and offers regarding DR and backup.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mal. That was very, very useful information about the disaster recovery. Next slide. So in terms of disaster recovery or backup, in general, business continuity, if you are thinking about or if you have a need within your organization, please feel free to reach out to us. we will put the contacts, the last slide. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to work with you, assist you to build a case, evaluate different options, and give you the best suitable options within AWS to set up your backup or a disaster recovery infrastructure. So you can feel safe that your business has a safety net, even in case of any catastrophe happening in your primary site. We're happy to support you. We can do a free consultation, free assessment, and even to an extent where we can, work with you to build the case and propose a solution that's suitable for your business. Next slide. So apart from the DR consultation, we also we've been working with a lot of customers who've been assisting other customers who are thinking about taking on the cloud journey. Sometimes the cloud journey can be a bit of a daunting task. We can help you, we can handhold you, and walk with you throughout the journey to ensure that you're getting the best, value for the money, and more importantly, navigates the unknowns and uncertainties. So you're able to reap the full value out of AWS infrastructure. So we're currently helping customers. For existing AWS customers, we're helping them with the cost optimization. If you are looking at ways to optimize costs, even on AWS, there are, AWS offers various ways to, bring down your cost, right from going into a commitment model to application redesign to application modernization. There are, several different ways you can optimize your costs, and AWS has mechanisms to do that. So we help customers on the cost optimization front. We also are helping customers with respect to migration. If you are running things on data center, you're thinking of reducing your data center cost, or thinking of modernizing your IT infrastructure, we can help you with the consultation part as well. So we've helped a lot of customers in the region to assess their existing IT infrastructure across various aspects, from application standpoint, user standpoint, compliance standpoint, economic standpoint, dependency standpoint. So we've looked at, generally when we go through these assessments, we look at multiple aspects. We evaluate all possible facades before we take you through the cloud journey. So we help customers with the migration as well. So currently we're giving free consultation for customers who are thinking of migrating from current data center to AWS. That's also something you can avail. Just feel free to reach out to any one of the team members. We'll be happy to support you. The next slide. Yep. So here's the details of the contact details of the team. Feel free to reach out to us, any one of us. We've put Imad's contact as well. So Imad is based, as he said, he's based here in Dubai. He's a territory business manager. You can reach out to Imad or to any one of our team who are also based here in UAE. They'll be very, very happy to assist you and help you with the cloud journey. So with that, we will go over to the Q&A. We see there are a lot of questions Let me start with the first one. So CloudEndure and AWS Cloud are different licenses, right? Yes. So it's one of the services that's being offered by AWS. The CloudEndure specifically, as Imad mentioned, this is very specific to cloud migration and disaster recovery. So if you're thinking of setting up a disaster recovery setup or environment on AWS Cloud, CloudEndure is the tool that you would want to use. And the pricing is based on the number of hosts, as in the source servers that you want to replicate to cloud. AWS DR integrate with other cloud platforms as well. I assume you're referring to CloudEndure again, but as far as DR is concerned, it doesn't matter whether you're running it on-premise or running it on Azure, or other GCP or any other cloud platforms. The source can be anything. We can support it as long as the destination, as in your DR, is pointing towards AWS. So technically, the answer is yes. We can integrate with other cloud platforms along with your on-premise, as long as the DR is sitting in AWS. There's another question. Can we implement disaster recovery solution from on-premise infrastructure to cloud, AWS cloud infrastructure? Yes, I think I partly answered the earlier question. It is possible with CloudEndure. You can have your source as your on-premise data center and your DR as AWS. And the beauty with this solution is, as Imad mentioned, it's something that happens quite seamless. You put an agent on the source machine, it replicates block by block into the destination stores as a EBS storage. It doesn't spin up the machine automatically. You will have only one pilot machine. So at the time of disaster, all you have to do is just go to the CloudEndure console, right-click on the target machine and spin up a EC2 instance. You choose your region, and it automatically spins up. Only then you will start incurring the compute cost. Otherwise, you're only incurring a storage cost. So it's one of the very efficient, DR solution. It gives you near real-time, replication. And so both RTO and RPO, if you're looking at applications which requires less than 30 minutes or 15 minutes of RTO or RPO, this is one of the best solutions that you could consider. Can I use AWS Backup on-premise data? I believe it's currently supported for AWS services within AWS. Anything that you use it within EBS, EFS, RDS, they are currently supported. On-premise, I don't think it is supported at the moment. Imad had answered the CloudEndure pricing. Fantastic. And one last question, can we implement cross-region disaster recovery scenarios in AWS to ensure business continuity? Yes, we can. We can consider, if you are running your workloads on Ireland, we can set up a DR in Frankfurt or in Singapore. The way we advise customers is we look at the user distribution. If the users are all congregated within, say, UAE, we look at the latency. In terms of latency requirement, Bahrain has the lowest latency as far as UAE is concerned. Then the closest is Mumbai, which is the India Western region. We see anywhere between 35 to 40 milliseconds as a latency. So we generally look at the latency. So if you're putting a primary in Bahrain, you might want to consider putting your DR in Mumbai. So that way, even in case of a disaster scenario, when you fail over, the users will still not suffer from the network latency. So you can do a cross-region. The answer is yes, you can do cross-region scenarios, but there are certain nuances, subtle nuances you want to consider before you do your cross-region DR setup. I think that's all the questions that we have on the chat window. So even, if there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us. You have the email IDs and contact numbers out there. So I hope the session was very useful. We're happy to support you. So if there are any requirements, please feel free to reach out to us. Over to you, Mad.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you, the whole Citrus team. And most importantly, thank you, everyone, for joining the call. Hopefully it was useful and beneficial for you and an eye-opener. I can't stress enough the importance of having a strategy in place for your backup and DR. And moving forward, as I said, we would be more than happy to support you in all of your requirements from an AWS standpoint, whether it's DR, backup, or any other AWS-related service. Please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we will be sending a recap email to all of you with a presentation with some links. And if you're interested to take the discussions further, we can have one-to-one calls and address your specific requirements.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you, and have a great weekend.